Hello and welcome to episode 286 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts, along with strategies for success. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we will air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a review or a rating. That would mean a lot to me and also help others find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. So, we introverts are always thinking it's a gift we have, a strength. We can come up with some great ideas, some innovative solutions, and often things others haven't even thought about. We can make things better in our personal lives, for our families, where we work, our businesses, or businesses we want to start, perhaps even ideas to change the world. I was thinking of some examples of well-known introverts that had some great ideas and imaginations. J.K. Rowling, creator of Harry Potter, through years of quiet writing and imagination. I know my family greatly benefited from this introvert's great imagination. My three kids read all of the Harry Potter books, and then as a family, we watched all of the movies together. And another author, Dr. Seuss, he showed that an introvert's quiet imagination can create a whole world that delighted millions of children. We bought many of these books and checked out many from the library when my kids were little. My kids love the illustrations and the rhymes. A favorite of mine. Now, the star belly sneetches have bellies with stars. The plain belly sneetches had none upon theirs. In the world of computers, Bill Gates showed that thoughtful analysis and quiet focus can help shape an entire industry. And of course, he really did change the world. And I have a lot of Apple fans in my house, so I should also mention Steve Wozniak as a great example of an introvert's quiet imagination. He's widely described as the engineer who built much of the early Apple hardware, and he said that he preferred working alone rather than on a committee or in teams. And then there's Steven Spielberg, a director of groundbreaking films that changed modern cinema. Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably my favorite. And don't bring a sword to a gunfight, right? And then there's, different political leaders. Abraham Lincoln, a powerful leader, often described as quiet and reflective. Susan Cain wrote the book Quiet, which helped turn introversion into a cultural conversation by showing that introverts have real strengths and don't need fixing. She's often quoted by many of my guests who, when I ask them what helped them to embrace their introversion. Thank you, Susan. Carl Jung, the psychologist who gave us the terms introvert and extrovert, was himself an introvert, more drawn to inner reflection rather than outer stimulation. So, do you have lots of ideas? I know my mind is constantly generating ideas. Sometimes it feels like a nonstop stream. One thought leads to another, and before I know it, I've got more ideas than I know what to do with. Sometimes it makes it hard to sleep. And while it can be a strength, I had to learn something important. Having ideas isn't enough. I needed to learn how to manage them. We have to figure out how to turn ideas into strategy and not just noise. In fact, this has become so important to me. I devoted a whole chapter to it in my book, Minding Your Time, Time Management, Productivity, and Success, especially for introverts. Capturing ideas, managing ideas is part of our strategy for productivity and success. So let's walk through three key practices that have made a huge difference for me. Creating space for ideas, taking a break when they're not coming, and capturing ideas when they do come, even if it's at inconvenient times. So let's start with creating space. As introverts, we tend to do our best thinking when we have room, mentally, emotionally, physically. Our ideas often need a quiet place to land. But if our calendars are too full, our surroundings are too noisy, or our minds are constantly being pulled in from one thing to the next, those ideas can stay buried. Creating space gives your mind a chance to stretch out and allows thoughts to settle. Instead of being rushed, it gives you a margin to notice connection, see a pattern, uncover an idea that may have been there all along. Sometimes what feels like a lack of creativity is really just a lack of space. That's why it helps to be intentional about it. Creating space might mean setting aside a quiet block of time in your day. There was a time when I thought I needed to be available at all times to all people, and this didn't work out so well. This was difficult for me. So, one of the best things I did, I blocked off the first 90 minutes of my day to get some good thinking done and perhaps some good work done as well. And this permission matters. A lot of us feel pressure to always be available or to always be doing something, always answering something or making something happen. But ideas don't always show up in a hurry. They often come when we slow down enough to notice them. So this time early in the morning is great. I also regularly look at my calendar and find spots where I might need some quiet time to think or reflect or to strategize. And then personally, I love a Sunday morning for thinking about my personal life. I get up when the rest of the family's asleep and the house is quiet, and this does wonders for me. Remember, quiet time for us introverts isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity for doing your best work and living your best life. For introverts, constant interaction in high stimulation environments can often drain our brilliant ideas. And sometimes group brainstorming is effective, and there's a real value in sharing ideas out loud with others. But often for introverts, our best ideas come with space and time when we step back, slow down, and give our minds room to think. So if you want better ideas, don't just look for more stimulation, look for more space, because ideas don't always thrive under pressure. They emerge when there's room to breathe. Now let's talk about what to do when the ideas aren't coming. Sometimes we're working on a project and the ideas just aren't coming, even when we have the quiet time to think. And this is where something I call passive thinking can become incredibly powerful. I once wrote a popular short blog called Active Thinking versus Passive Thinking. And the idea is simple. Sometimes trying harder to think actually works against you. As introverts, sometimes our thinking caps are turned up high. But when we hit a wall, when the solution just feels out of reach, forcing it might not help. That's when we might need to shift out of active thinking and into passive thinking. Passive thinking means stepping away from the problem. It's giving your brain a different focus so it can reset and make new connections in the background. For you, that might look like, working on something else, working on another project, going for a workout, taking a walk, reading, watching some TV or YouTube, or simply leaning back in your chair, closing your eyes for a few minutes. And from the outside, it might look like you're doing nothing. You might even feel like you're being unproductive, but you're not. Your brain's still working, just in a different way. And often when you return to your problem, the answer's there, clearer, simpler, and easier to access. If your brain isn't producing the solution, don't push harder. Step away for a bit. Let passive thinking do its work. Okay, so now let's move to the third, and this one's critical. Capturing your ideas when they pop up, even if at inconvenient times. Because if you're like me, ideas don't always show up when you're sitting at your desk ready to work. They show up in your car, in the shower, right before bed, or when you're trying to sleep, or when you're in a meeting on a different topic, or trying to work on something unrelated to your new idea. And a couple things happen if you don't capture them. Maybe they just keep bugging you. They linger and keep tapping you on the shoulder saying, don't forget me, which can be very disruptive to where you're trying to focus. Or the other thing, sometimes it might be a brilliant idea just at the wrong time, and you may lose it. You may forget it forever. Our minds can become quite cluttered with constant ideas. David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done, used the phrase mind like water. Imagine throwing a pebble into a still pond. The water responds appropriately, then returns to calm. That's what we want for our minds. But that only happens when we capture what's coming in. For me, capturing ideas has been a game changer. Have you ever actually written down an idea on a napkin? What do you do in the shower when you have those great ideas? I've heard some have waterproof notebooks, but I haven't gone that far yet. Sometimes it's as simple as a notebook and a pen. I always have a notebook on hand when I'm working, even though whatever I write in that notebook, it won't stay there. It's going to need to go into some online document that I can access anywhere. But I do find that I think well with a pen and paper. for making notes. But then, like I said, it's important to go through the notes on a regular basis and put the important parts into a document that I can access those ideas and to-dos from anywhere. And I always have my phone, and I often use voice to text to record something before it slips away. And when I'm driving and inspiration strikes, I don't try just to juggle those thoughts while navigating traffic. Sometimes my best ideas have come in the car on the way to work, way home from work. In the past, I'd call myself and leave a voicemail to listen to later. Kind of old school, right? Today, I can do the same with an AI assistant, hands-free. And beyond just the simple capture with this AI assistant, I often use AI as a thought partner, engaging in brainstorming sessions with well-crafted prompts. And the method doesn't matter as much as the habit of capturing your ideas when they come. Because when you capture ideas, you free your mind and you don't let the brilliant ideas get away. You're no longer trying to hold everything at once. You can focus on what's in front of you, knowing your ideas are stored safely somewhere. And this applies not just to creative ideas, but also to tasks. If you know you need to finish a proposal by Friday, you don't want the ideas that come bouncing around while you're trying to work on something else. You can quickly capture them and continue to work on the important task at hand. Otherwise, your brain's going to keep reminding you, you have to finish that proposal. And that constant reminder can pull your attention away from whatever you're trying to focus on. So capturing creates clarity, and clarity creates focus. So here's a few simple action steps you can take. First, when your mind's full, take a moment to capture ideas. Do a brain dump. Write them all down, record them, get them out of your head. If you're on the go, you can send yourself a message, whether it's a voicemail, a note, an email, so it's waiting for you for later. And third, do a regular review of what you captured. Build a habit of revisiting your ideas and deciding what matters now, what can wait, and what you can let go of. I love the concept of the someday maybe list from David Allen's Getting Things Done. Capture all your ideas in a place you can review them later. If you're like me, you're going to have more ideas than you can ever possibly do. So it's important to focus on what is most beneficial now, continue to view the ideas you've had, and determine when the time has come for a particular idea. Ultimately, mastering your ideas isn't about working harder, it's about working in harmony with your natural strengths. By consistently creating the space your mind needs to breathe, allowing for passive thinking when you hit a wall, and maintaining a system to capture those thoughts the moment they emerge, you transform potential mental noise into intentional strategy. These practices don't just help you stay organized, they ensure that your brilliant ideas, whether they arrive in the quiet of a Sunday morning or while you're navigating traffic, have the room they need to become reality. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. I hope you take the time to explore other episodes and learn from our amazing guests. Remember, if you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there is a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the four-letter Myers-Briggs code. I will add a link in the show notes. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or through the quietandstrong.com website. And let's keep the conversation going. As always, get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.